supposed to read?
You don't have to read
Okay.
anything because we don't have any board remote participation.
Okay.
You're all here.
Okay, I'm calling this meeting to order. For the purpose of discussing personnel requests. You have in front of you a list of the requests. And I'm going to turn this over to David because he can explain to you how much is available.
Okay. Welcome everyone to this annual Personnel Committee meeting. Thank you, Kathy, for organizing us and getting us here. So in the budget cycle for JMRL in this early falls in September, JMRL's managers, department heads make requests for new operational costs for the following fiscal year. They have made these requests. We received 14 requests for new or upgraded positions. And it's the Personnel Committee's job to prioritize these and make a recommendation to the full board, which will then send that on to the Budget Committee to work into the fiscal year 24 proposed budget. This is a lot of requests this year. This is a hard thing because every year we have this meeting and I say, well, the Personnel Committee's job is not to think about the budget implications, but to think about the needs of the library. But it's impossible to ignore the budget implications. So I can answer any questions if you have them about what the costs of a particular request are, because I have got those figures with me. In general, last week I had the pre-budget meeting with all 5 of our jurisdictions, and several of them weren't there, but the 3 that were there are very concerned about a recession on the horizon. So every year it's doom and gloom when we talk about next budget year, but this year more so than in my entire experience. So I don't think that I think that new requests are going to be looked at with a very critical eye by our jurisdictional partners. So we have to really be able to justify, well, what are the needs here that this request is going to meet? And that the competition is not between library positions. It's not a position at Northside versus another position at Northside. It's within the jurisdiction. It's the position the library is asking for versus the position the fire department's asking for versus the position that the schools need, that the police need, that the gas department need, these types of things. So that's the doom and gloom out of the way. And we can go through and I can tell you a little bit about each of these requests. And then my goal is to get them in a priority list. So like, here's the most important one down to, before we get any further, all of these are needed things at JMRL. Every single person who made this request, they didn't do it because, oh, it'd be nice. They did it because they have a need in their department. But we're going to have to make some hard choices, not just the Personnel Committee, but the whole board and the Budget Committee as well. So I'd like to get it in a list of 1 through 14, and then also kind of categorize those into here are must-haves that we are going to recommend that need to be in the budget for next year. Here are the kind of nice-to-haves. And if we can identify any that we say, okay, well, here is not right now, basically. Go ahead, Meredith.
So I only had one other committee meeting, and I only remembered like 3 things. Is this unusual? Was there pent-up demand after the pandemic?
I think that, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think that we went several years in which JMRL managers kind of towed the line, because they were expecting tough budget years during COVID, so they didn't ask for things that they needed. Also, there was such a shift in services during COVID, that it took a while to kind of filter down to be like, here are the things that we now need that we maybe didn't need before. We had several different ways of trying to deliver this service.
Okay, that's really helpful, because last time I was like, oh, we don't have that many requests, and this time I'm like, wow,
I think
what changed?
In the past few years, when I've talked to the managers, I've said, let's try to keep our costs down for our partners as much as we can. Operationally, we try on the non-personnel side, so we've tried to keep those costs way down in order to be good partners. And things have gone fairly well the last few years, but now this is kind of pent up over the last few years.
Thank you.
Okay. So what I will do, Kathy, if you don't mind, is I'm not going to read to you everything that's in this packet. That I gave you. It's got all 14 requests, and it has the strategic plan justification that each manager used. So they're required to say, here's where in the strategic plan this request would meet JMRL's needs. I also have more detailed information from each manager. They filled out long forms to get it. This is the condensed version of that. So if you have questions about any particular, what this position would do, how it's different from another position, we can go back to that source document and kind of look at that. Okay. So let's just start at the top and I'll read all 14 of them and then we can discuss. I'll let you know kind of, I think in my mind, there are really two things that are definitely in the must-have category that would be my top priority to make sure we try to get into the budget, and I'll point those out while we talk about it. So first, for administration, 10 more hours per week to the new courier position. It was added last year. It's 30 hours. So before that, I'm sorry, it's not a new position. Before that, it was I believe a 16-hour-a-week position. Last year, it made it through the budget, upgraded that to 30 hours. This is an attempt to get the last 10 hours to have it be a full-time position. It has been a boon to JMRL having that second courier driver just for our normal delivery operations and also to facilitate getting supplies around. That person has taken over the supply work that had been our business manager's job to go get, the pens that they need at Northside and things like that. So it's been very useful. Happy to have it. 10 more hours would be certainly of use. The next request is from the bookmobile. This is in conjunction with me, actually. This would be one of my must-have to go in there. 6 additional hours per week to the 2 bookmobile specialist positions. It's currently a 26-hour position and a 20-hour position, and they have a boss that's a 40-hour. Marianne is the coordinator there. So these would be additional service hours that would go to Louisa and Nelson. Wendy and I have talked to Louisa County about the potential for more outreach and bookmobile services. The county is well aware that they've got a huge growth center at Zion's Crossroads there that doesn't have a library building to go to. They had bookmobile service around the 010s that was grant funded for a few years. It was successful, didn't get picked up. Now we're going to go back and ask for it again as a kind of way to bring some service to Zion's Crossroads and build off of that for future services there. One of the reasons that this can make it a must-have in my mind is that it's pretty much a la carte. Louisa County can look at that number and they can talk about it and decide yes or no, and it doesn't have an impact on the overall budget outside of that.
And so it's six for each one of those.
Yes, correct. The other one is to Nelson County.
Right. So one would become a full-time, wouldn't it?
No, it would be 26 hours and 32 hours. So it'd be pretty close.
I looked that up, but it says 32 to 40 hours is considered full-time.
That's true. And a lot of, and I think federal definitions for JMRL, we consider full-time to be 40 hours. Yeah. At 30 hours, you get 3/4 of the healthcare costs basically to the organization. But I believe your benefits package is worth the full benefits package. I'd have to look that up. The difference between, I don't think we have anybody at 32 hours currently. This would be the only one at JMRL. So the Nelson County one, same situation. It would be identifying some spots 2 Fridays a month, basically, to take the bookmobile down to spots throughout the county. And also, we would charge them some operational costs to hopefully maintain this 24-hour library that Alita and I have been talking about. It's like a red box for library materials, but it doesn't come without, it would need IT support. It would need to be stocked and things like that. Okay, the Central Children's Room had 2 requests here. So that's the Children's Department at the main library in downtown Charlottesville. 200 additional substitute hours per year for the children's specialist substitute position. So they currently have a position. They're just seeking more hours for that substitute. So it's somebody who can come in, work on the desk. Their justification had a lot to do with allowing the other staff to go do more outreach things that currently they might have to say no to because they have to work a public service desk.
How many hours do they currently have?
That's a hard question.
That's a great question. I'd have to look that up later. Which I can do. Just take a second. The second request is for 10 more hours per week to a children's specialist position, which is currently a 20-hour position. I'll find that before we're done today, okay? Okay, Gordon Avenue is requesting a new 20-hour per week part-time branch specialist position. So this is a completely new position. It's the first one of these first few that's an entirely new position. And I frequently say to managers, that's the hardest thing to get. Is something, it's easier to have something and to build onto it a little bit because you've already got a base level of salary and benefits and things than it is to start from scratch. And a lot of times it's because our jurisdictions are looking at other needs for entirely new positions across their whole, all the departments that they manage. So they would consider it, they have to consider not just the library, but also other departments. This would be my second must-have for one reason that there's a capital project in the books right now to convert the book return at Gordon Avenue into a drive-up window, similar to the one here at the Northside Library. So if that project happens, they're going to need staff in order to make that work, basically. They currently don't have the staff for that. It would have to be limited hours, limited service. We won't know for sure when that capital project is going to make until later this year. So there's a chance that would start right away. There's a certain amount of money put aside for it. It hasn't gone out to bid yet. And it might come in that they wouldn't get it built right away. But we're going to need this eventually. Crozet, 200 additional sub hours per year for the branch specialist positions. One thing that I have to say about that request is that, I made a note somewhere. They were willing to trade off from one of their existing sub pools, so to give something back there to make it a little bit more palatable. They've got a support position substitute hours, which is someone who can come in and work the front circulation desk and checkbooks in and out. What they're requesting is a more expensive substitute. It's a specialist substitute that they could use to go out and do programs in the library. So they would give some hours back from the support in order to get this, which brings the net cost down a little bit. So the entire cost would be almost $4,000 for that, and this would be about half of that, about $1,800. So
If they give that service back, what impact would that be on the library? Because okay, you got this one person that's doing this more costly,
right.
And so it seems like you're going to lose some stuff here.
They would definitely lose a little flexibility. They would lose the ability to call on somebody when they needed it. The person in the specialist position could also do those tasks if needed. So if they just needed somebody to come and work at the circulation desk, they could bring this person in, even though it's a higher rate to do that. But they couldn't send the person who's currently out the desk out to do the other one. So it's a trade-off. Northside, many requests here. So 20 more hours per week to a reference librarian position, which is currently a part-time position at 20 hours. So it'd be bringing that position up to a full-time position. 2 more hours per week to a reference librarian position, which is currently a 20-hour position. So it's just for coverage. And Chris, if you have anything to add about it, Chris works here at Northside, then feel free to throw it in. A new 20-hour per week circulation support position. So this is another request for an entirely new part-time circulation support position. New 300 hours per year children's specialist substitute position. So this would be somebody that they could call in last minute, basically, or they could schedule in advance if people were going to be away on vacation. For example, they're going to have a parental leave situation soon where somebody's going to be gone for a couple months and they'd be able to call in that specialist. Currently, there is no substitute position for the children's desks here. Is that correct? It would be basically, it would be somebody coming from the reference desk to go sit in there. Correct. They've requested also 2 new 20-hour children's specialist positions for the children's department here. And then the final 2, the regional reference, 10 more hours per week for our 30-hour volunteer coordinator reference librarian position. And 20 hours per week in Scottsville to bring a 20-hour position up to a full-time position for branch support.
That regional reference person. Is that Northside
That's at Central.
or Central?
Yeah. Okay. They're housed at the Central Library. Second to last. It says regional reference there. And again, it's not the budget committee, but that one's a little different because the regional reference costs, 10% of their costs are for the entire district, and then 90% of their costs are split between Charlottesville and Albemarle. So it's like split up a little different because they do work around the region, but they're housed at Central. So that has a small cost to every jurisdiction. Shoot.
Is the reasoning to get 2 people for 20 hours a week per week for the children's special, instead of getting a 140-hour a week, is that it's more palatable for us and we don't have to pay health insurance?
It's the same cost for JMRL, the 220 and the 140. It's the same dollar amount.
Really? Yeah. Well, so why wouldn't we get a full? Isn't that easier to hire a full-time person?
I think the thinking for managers usually, and I'm putting words into somebody's mouth here,
Okay.
but it's usually more bodies to call upon for scheduling. So, you know, if it's just you as the 40-hour person,
I get
and you get
COVID.
called away or you get COVID
Yeah.
and you're gone. But if it's you and Chris as 2 20-hour people and you get COVID, then Chris is still available. So it's for ease of scheduling.
Got it.
I have one quick comment. I don't know if it really makes much of an impact, but the second Northside item, the 2 hours, 2 more hours per week to the reference library position, currently 20. That position is actually currently at 28. And so
I'm
this
sorry.
would bump it up to 30. I don't know if that's really important, but 28 to 30 might make more of a difference than 20 to 22.
Thank you for pointing that out. It will make a budgetary difference because 30 is a benchmark for 3/4 of the 3/4 of the benefits. So those 2 positions at Northside, the justifications basically are to expand programming offerings. They tied both of those 2 requests into strategic plan goal number 1, access and outreach, and number 3, staffing. It's providing and promoting access to all library materials to all community members through both in-house and outreach efforts, and hire and retain a sufficient number of appropriately trained employees to provide superior service to all library users. Okay, that was the easy part. Now comes the hard part. Any objections to my choices for the 2 must-have positions being, and we can put this up on the screen here to make it a little easier. The bookmobile additional hours, and then the Gordon Avenue branch specialist.
Did you talk to Nelson as well about the hours?
We have talked to Nelson about the concept of like what we're interested in doing. We talked to one supervisor and county staff about additional bookmobile service, and Lita and I are meeting with them again in a few weeks here. So we have had preliminary conversations, but not with like a full board setting.
I want to make sure they would buy in.
Yeah, I think that
If we say yes and then they go, what?
there's always at this phase before we're getting into nickels and dimes, like they are interested in it and they would like to see that service. Whether or not it makes it through the full budgeting process, different story. But they won't be surprised to see it pop up on the budget this year.
I think you're right. I think the bookmobile is incredibly important in terms of reaching people in our counties that can't get to the library. So I know that we funded our bookmobile, another bookmobile person.
Yes.
Yeah. Last go around, and that was definitely, I'm definitely excited to hear how that impacted.
That person just started. Wow.
How that will impact.
How it will impact, yeah.
In other events.
Albemarle County asked the same question. So not only are they looking at, they want to.
Wait, we told you to hire them whenever, and you didn't hire someone immediately, David?
They want to know. So this is just a glimpse into the budgetary thinking of the jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Not only are they, we're talking about next year, they want to know what are we getting for the money that we paid last year.
Yep. Well,
What's
you
the value, right?
just hired them, and
Yeah.
you're already upping their hours. It must be.
I will say about these two things, the Bookmobile and the Gordon Avenue, is that they're the only two here that we directly can point to and point to new services. You know, for the Bookmobile, it's Nelson and Louisa, and then for Gordon Avenue, it's a new drive-through location. So it's an easier thing to explain away sometimes when it's more of a transactional thing where it's like, okay, you pay for this, and here's the thing that people are going to get for it. The rest of them are important and are great and support what we're currently doing, and we need more staff at all these places and will lead to greater things down the road, but it's not as easy as a one-to-one connect the dots.
I'm guessing that with all the requests, you imagine have data to point to how busy it is, and I could barely find a parking space in the back.
Yes, we have data to show how busy the libraries are. We have door counts, we have program attendance, we have circulation. It's a hard thing over the last few years.
Yep.
So it used to be able to easily compare apples to apples, but now it's like, okay, well, this
2 years
month,
ago.
2 years ago, we were offering, you
No
know,
one was here,
do
and
this.
now, the other thing that I was noticing a pattern of is a lot of requests to free someone up or to create a position where someone could do more outreach. Could you talk a little bit about that? Are they going to the schools? Are they
Sure.
going to the community? Are they just doing
Yeah.
a book group at lunchtime? Like what?
It's generally, we mean library service outside of the library walls. So it's all those things. It's being able to go to community events. You know, one of the things that I'll be able to tell Albemarle County when it comes to that new position for the Bookmobile is that, oh, we were able to take the Bookmobile to, Yancey, the Yancey Community Center's Esmont Days event. We were able to go to an event in a park here. Then we went to the Summer Sundown at Washington Square Park, things like that. So taking the service outside the library. So it's usually not the Bookmobile because there's only one Bookmobile and they've got a full schedule all day. It's usually staff that are going and bringing a table. They're bringing, it depends on the event, right? If they're going down to be at a festival, the farmer's market or something like that, then it's generally just handing out information, talking about the library, signing people up for library cards if you want, like maybe having some giveaways there. If it's a specific event that we get requested to go to, it's usually either Children's and Youth Services providing a story time for a group or a community of some sort, or it's going to talking about databases and things like that. So a lot of those requests are tied into children's services too. So I mentioned it a few times. I think I mentioned it for Central Children's. I mentioned it for the children's department here. It's for school visits. It's to get out of the building in order to either provide direct library services or promote library services.
And do we have, I'm sure you're keeping on, do we have some information about whether those requests have increased recently? And how many are we able to meet or not?
How many do we turn away?
Have to turn away because we don't have those hours.
Yeah, we have a request form that comes in from organizations where they ask us to come and meet those needs. And again, there's a kind of COVID gap, right? And then there was a period where we got quite a bit of them because people were going outside to do things and they wanted community partners to be outside. And then right now we've just settled into a pattern, it seems, where we're getting a lot of requests across the board to outside events. So yes, I would be able to find that data. I don't have it off the top.
Yeah, no, I'm just talking about in terms of budgeting. And,
Yeah, that's the type of thing
Intensification,
that will get asked too.
because it's one thing to say, look, we're getting all these requests and we really feel like the library needs to be leaving the walls and going, to Yancey, whatever, meet people where they are, and another to say, oh, well, we think we would do lots of this stuff, so we'll hire somebody. If we had more people, we would.
Great point.
And instead we just stick them on the circulation desk or something, and then we don't really do that stuff. So it would be, I hope it would be a good argument for that, but
Agreed.
And I think we kind of did. I've only been to a budget meeting for Charlottesville because that's where I am. And I think we did that. But, the COVID kind of.
Right. Generally, we try to bring to those meetings, we anticipate those types of questions, where's the data that we can show that backs up this
but
request?
it's our community wants this,
Right.
is requesting, making requests that cannot be met.
So for if and maybe, people don't look at
No, that's not gonna, that's a great, I think that's an excellent.
the budget.
Leah, which one did you have a question about? How many current hours? I finally got this sheet.
Oh, the Central Children, was that the one? The 200 additional sub hours. I was wondering how many do they have already? It looks like Rose has the same thing, two additional $200 sub hours.
Nice round number. You're gonna request something. 162 brings up too many questions.
Yes.
Looks like for Central Children's, they currently have 2 substitute positions at 400 hours. So it would be, you know, a total of 1,000 instead of a total of 800. And then for Crozet, and remember Crozet's was the one they were going to do the swap there. Crozet's is slightly different because it would be hours available for a current salaried position. So that person is a, the branch specialist currently works. This is much easier to read on a computer. $20 hours a week. So this would be adding the ability throughout the year for 200 additional hours. So 20 hours a week is 1,040 hours a year for a part-time position. So bring our total up to 1,240. Okay, so we're okay with the bookmobile one. What about the Gordon Avenue specialist position? Making that a must-have, so those 2 would be my top 2 priority.
I feel it's a must-have, given the demographics that we serve in that area.
Yeah.
I think it's a must-have.
Also with COVID, I imagine that some people would be more comfortable
Yeah, that's
doing
a
library services from the car with
that's
them.
a number you can see here at this building, how much the drive up services.
Yeah.
have been.
Right.
Okay.
And that is an exciting thing to talk about.
Yeah,
Adding a
it's,
new
it's
service.
a neat, innovative service.
But that's in conjunction with this capital project that may or may.
We're gonna be optimistic about it. I have concerns.
Cynical
I'm
already.
just hearing, I love it, this is great. I'm just hearing that capital projects are coming in way over budget right now because of supply chain issues, because of inflation, things that a year ago you thought were gonna cost $1 million now cost $2 million. This doesn't cost.
They're going down again.
Good.
I heard lumber was down.
I served on that committee when I was with planning commission.
Yeah,
That's a meeting. It's hard.
it's hard because you gotta guess, you know, what's it gonna be like a year from
You
now.
look into your crystal ball.
I think I also, the things that I see organizationally, so the rest of these are kind of need that everybody has. Those are the 2 new services. Everybody has these needs. You can see from Northside, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 requests from Northside. Like that's the potentially the neediest. That doesn't sound right. Northside is JMRL's busiest branch. It's the at this point it is the busiest in circulation. It's the busiest in foot traffic. It's the busiest all around. It was the busiest throughout the pandemic because of that drive-through for a good part. You know, they had quite a bit of demand during that time. So I'm interested in figuring out ways that we can support this staff here by giving them help. I also know that asking for new positions this year, there's a good chance that those are not gonna make it through the budget process.
I think that these
a lot of these children's services, yeah, that's where we need to get to those guys, because, to make them want to read, to make them,
I also have a concern, Alita, that, for years, I've been with JMRL now for 20 years in terms of, and we didn't have to worry about children's programming, story times, like that was every year, constant. So all the new things were about adult programs, young adult programs, like what are the ways that we can bring in, kind of have young families come in, and then we lose people for a little while, and then when they start to retire, they will come back for things from the library. But in the pandemic, those families for a good long while had to go elsewhere for story time. It was either do it virtually, in which we're competing with the whole rest of the world for virtual, or it was, come in for limited service or whatnot. So I'm interested in bolstering up those youth services again, the kids stuff, because it was our bread and butter and we didn't have to worry about it. Well, now we better worry about it because it's a whole generation of kids that maybe are looking elsewhere. So we want to make sure that those kids have a place and that we can provide these services. So yeah, I think that it's a no-brainer in my mind. The hours, the substitute hours at Northside for the children's department, they currently they can't call on somebody to come in if they did want to go and do an event, or if they did have, heaven forbid, somebody out with COVID or whatnot. Let's use the parental leave instead. That's much nicer.
Okay, that's
We have somebody out for a couple months, and they are going to be relying on the rest of the staff here to come and fill in, but not trained children's staff. So that's the 300 hours per year children's specialist position. And the other thing is that it's an easy cost. That would be.
You're saying sort of the next thing on the list would be adding the sub hours, so central, I guess. They already have a sub, right? Sub hours.
Yeah, those things, the sub hours definitely. And again, this is not the budget committee, so we can look more at like what are the needs and what would the best way to be to meet them. But just with an eye on what I'm anticipating for budget season. The substitute positions, I have a love-hate relationship with JMRL's substitute setup, because these are employees that do not get access to benefits because they don't work enough hours throughout the year. And because of that, they don't go through the same evaluation process. They don't always get access to the same training. So we're going to ask somebody to stand up and represent the organization and serve the public, but they're maybe not necessarily going to have gotten all of the benefits of being a regular employee here. So a long-term goal of mine is to not have any substitutes at all, but I absolutely now understand why we have so many. It's because we can add a 300-hour substitute position for a few $1,000s, whereas a 20-hour position costs tens of thousands of dollars, and it's much more difficult to get through the budget process.
But the substitute could theoretically be the one that just comes to the library and helps people find books, while the other trained staff.
Yeah, they're the ones that would be doing story times and things like that.
Not the regular staff, or
The regular staff would be doing the regular. So we have a line between what we call support staff and specialist staff. The support staff, the line generally is that they don't do programming. So a specialist, and this would be a substitute specialist, would be able to do programming. Usually it's assist in, like if you're having a story time that requires 2 people, the main person would probably be the paid hourly staff, and the other one would be the substitute. But largely we're looking at filling coverage gaps. And right now, this desk here in children's doesn't have somebody to call on.
It's important.
I think that if they were, say the second man, with the, even though they're specialists, but they would be the second man. Well, if the first man is gone, then
You're up to bat.
yeah, they're up to bat, and then they've done some of the work, and so it's not like they're going in cold or anything.
So would I hear some support? So it's kind of second tier. So they're the must have. Does anybody else have anything that they think should be in that must have? Like we can't do without. So the two that I had were the Bookmobile and the Gordon Avenue for the new services. And that was the distinction.
Scottsville still not staffed enough. Says the
Scottsville-
person from Scottsville originally.
Scottsville is definitely not staffed enough.
Because I know that when we visited them, that was a concern, and
They only have 2 full-time employees there and they're open. I didn't bring hours, but they are open a tremendous amount of hours for a branch that size.
So it would seem that, we need to bolster that.
Yeah, we definitely need, and we have done some trading there. That's an Albemarle County only expense. The last few years, they had, the way that they made it work, that they added that many hours was by adding all these substitutes. So we traded in a bunch of substitute hours over the last few years to add some more hours to positions, to get some part-time positions in there. So we have been kind of working on bolstering that up at not a huge cost to the county. So they're going to want to know, hey, I thought we were done in Scottsville, but the honest truth is that they don't have enough staff for the hours that they're serving.
right, and we want to keep the library open enough so that the people around there can visit it, because you can't just keep it open from,
Well, and you want to
9
do
to
just more
4,
than
and
just
because
keep it
someone's
open.
driving, but if someone's driving past, they want to go.
It's just more than just keeping it open, you want some programs in there,
So
too.
just to stop and shop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is, I'm not sure how far this is happening, but down the road from the library there's was it a tire factory?
It's turning into a big housing complex.
Being converted into a lot of housing right down the street from the library. So we've got our
The
eye on
schools
that.
and the library will start filling the drain.
Yeah.
It'll be good to get ahead of that.
Yeah, that's the argument here. So, okay, so, Bookmobile, Gordon Avenue, we okay with the substitute children's positions here, the substitute hours? I should have numbered these for you, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the bottom, 300 hours per year. And then maybe Scottsville after that. And I think we're in the nice to have category in my mind right now.
And then obviously Northside has to get help here. It's sort of which one? It's a little hard for me.
It's effectively 3 different service desks making requests here. There's the children's desk, the reference desk, which is in the middle of the branch, and then the circulation desk. So it's 3 different types of jobs, basically, with 3 different managers who put these requests in to the branch manager there. All of them could use support for sure. In terms of flexibility there, and Chris, maybe you can speak to this better than I can. The reference desk and the children's desk can cover each other, or the reference desk can cover the children's desk. Okay, does it go vice versa?
It can, yes,
So the children's desk folks can cover the reference desk.
Depending on the person.
depending on the person, yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Some staff members are more comfortable doing it than others, so.
Well, I would think if we're gonna ask for a new job, we would want to maybe even broaden that out and get somebody that we know can cover all those things.
Mhm.
Like I'd be more interested in getting a floating position of some sort they could cover. Because if we're not going to get 4 new positions, right? So we can only ask for 1, then
Multitask,
we would want to maximize what we can get there.
and especially know how to work with the children.
Yeah. So maybe that would be the children's specialist, and just when we go into it, I'll talk to the staff here and talk to Lindsay and make sure that what we're really asking for is more of a branch specialist, somebody that could cover more bases.
Might be helpful, yeah.
I think Kathy's right. It's the children's one. You got to find just the right person. There's a lot of people can talk to adults. Not everybody can.
And hopefully if you're a librarian, you can find information.
Exactly. All right, so Bougainville Gordon Avenue, the substitute 300 hours in children's at Northside. Scottsville's 20-hour per week. Then maybe the children's specialist here at Northside.
Did we skip Central?
We haven't discussed those.
That was an additional 7 hours. I thought we were just talking generally.
That may, actually, why don't I make use of modern technology? And I'll kind of keep a list up here while we're going.
I think what you're doing is pulling up the top 10.
We're trying to pull out and
Top
categorize.
10 and categorize them. And right now, don't matter. Sure.
Select them all, and that's why you pay the big bucks.
Well, I want to just,
Yay!
so what we're talking about now, though, is
We gotta
moving
change all the numbers.
that one to number 1, and this one to number 2.
Northside,
This one, 3, and this one 4, and one of these 5.
I just thought when we were talking about the specialist support positions, we were kind of talking about Northside and Central both together.
I was
Even though
specifically
they're really
talking about.
separate. Yeah, that was just my
Yeah.
confusion.
Similar situations, different branches. Less flexibility for working multiple service desks at Central, but probably could be used to work at the circulation front desk, like a children's specialist could go also fill in. I think, to me, again, I hate to say it, but the substitute hours are easier to get down.
I just don't want to forget about Central.
Yeah, no requests from Nelson, Louisa, or Green. The only cost here, Alita, would be either in the administration, the more hours to the courier, that's a regional cost, or a slight portion of the bookmobile one, and then the regional reference would have,
Number 13.
yeah, it would be $77.15. Seems manageable.
I can write you a check right
I do
now.
a donor.
Well, yeah, exactly. We'll name like they name football coaches, it'd be the Alita child.
And we'll make you sign.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so. Where to go? So we've I think here's the top 6, and that's almost half of them, basically. And then at this point, everybody needs these things,
Did you put your courier on your courier?
It's not on there yet, no, but that likely would be my
next one.
next one, yeah.
Number 7.
I think it's a good spreading it around a bit. So the only request here that the only branch that we haven't touched on is Crozets. Yeah. That also seems palatable. I mean, we might be able to do that even without a budget request, if there are funds available at the end of the year. Like I said, it's a very small amount. And it's
Yeah,
really just
A busy library.
it's yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that we're spreading it around.
Yeah.
Sorry, Northside, you made a lot of requests.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, these are all important and legitimate.
Yeah.
So then we've got Northside, Central Children's, and the regional reference position left. In my mind, we're kind of hitting a break line here between, so we had the two must-haves, and then we had the would be good to have, and now we're getting into the maybe not for this year, like things that we might not even ask for in the budget. Does that seem like a fair, is there a line of demarcation for anybody or?
Well, the adding hours you were saying is easier than adding a new position.
Correct.
So you've got the reference librarian.
Okay.
20 more and then the 2 more. I don't know.
So there's this reference and then
Northside has 2 requests.
2 more and 20 more. Yeah, I mean, very likely that adding 2 more hours per week to that position. It does come, as I mentioned, with a break because of the hours that Chris mentioned. There's a typo here. Let me just go ahead and fix
Oh,
that.
right, that was 30, sorry. Or 28.
30.
Because of that, you know, the costs are not insignificant because it makes a leap up in what we pay for insurance. I think it would be about $5,000.
Okay.
I mean, how much is there a real value there, Chris? And you work this desk every day, like 2 more hours a week. How much of a difference is that enough? Basically, I mean, obviously it's not enough. They're asking for a whole other position.
But yeah, that would help out a whole lot. The person currently in that position does quite a bit of notary work. And so, yeah, just having 2 more hours that they're available to do that. And then also this person's also in charge of our make and takes and also quite a bit of our programming. So yeah, so just 2 more hours would be really beneficial.
Seems like good value.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that would be number 9. Is that right? And when Chris mentions notaries, and that's a good point. That is a very time-consuming service that the library offers, which is highly utilized and very people are very appreciative of it. But it takes time away from somebody when they're not, and it usually happens when they're supposed to be at the desk. You know, here, I think it's by appointment only, correct?
Mostly.
Yeah.
There's walk-ins when we can accommodate, but that's not always.
No,
Yeah.
it depends on what they're asking for too. Sometimes it's ask Krista, she's on the call. Sometimes it's 10 seconds, sometimes it's an hour. That's right. All right, so let's see. So we've got, I would think in my mind, Northside circulation, which we hadn't really hit on here. We talked about a specialist maybe being able to help with that, but this is another case of, like, to Meredith's point about, would you want the 40-hour, the 220-hour, or the extra, the body is what's important. And they effectively have 2 service desks to manage. There's the one inside the building, and then there's the drive-through, which is open mostly the same hours, right? It closes a little bit early.
That's right.
So just to give Latasha some flexibility in scheduling. That makes sense to me.
You're putting that at 10.
Yeah. Does it? Oh,
Writing up I'll coach you on your.
does that sound okay, Alita?
The regional reference, was that a request? That comes from everybody?
It comes specifically from the reference departments.
People pay, everyone pays.
Everyone pays, this is complicated, but per the regional agreement, everyone pays 10% for the cost of reference. And then the other 9% is considered a central library cost, which gets split between Charlottesville and Albemarle based on their usage of central, which is roughly 50-50 between the 2 of them. Goes a little bit up and a little bit down there. So everybody would have a minor share of this, but Charlottesville and Albemarle would split the rest of it.
Like, where's our regional reference house?
It's at the central library, yeah.
Make that 11.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
And so they're answering calls for anyone who needs help. It's not like they
Yes.
see you and say,
Right, which is why we charge everyone regionally, so they provide reference services to everyone across the region, and they also provide programming that goes out to all jurisdictions. So that leaves only Central Children's 10 more hours per week to a specialist position, 20 hours per week to a reference librarian position at Northside, and a new 20-hour specialist position in the children's. I would say part of me, in fairness' sake, thinks that the second request for a new position from children's here should be the bottom one. There's already 2 in there.
Actually, you've got the substitute children and then and the specialist, position. So, yeah, so I would think that other would be the last.
So
making someone full-time or making someone,
which one?
the other two, the other one is making someone full-time, adding 20 to a 20-hour week, and then adding 10.
Yeah, one is making it a 30-hour position, the other is making it a 40-hour position.
Are we prepared to take 40 hours with the benefits?
Well, that'll be up for the budget committee to decide. Yeah, that would be an expensive proposition. It basically would double the cost of the current position, but I have no doubt that there's need for it. Both cases.
Everything on this list.
Right, that's the hard part, right? It's all.
I think that it's well thought out.
Well, we need to break a tie between these two. 10 more hours to the children's specialists.
To children.
Okay, to kind of go along with Alita's.
Yep.
What you're saying is that. Okay, so now we've got a list in order here. And I think we're gonna need to ask the board to tell the budget committee, add these. Right, so I've got my top 2, which are the must-have, and then it kind of goes into the like 7, 8, 9 there. So let's look at the third choice, the 300 hours specialist substitute position. Are we okay with saying add these to the budget committee?
We were saying that's fairly low cost.
Yeah, I don't think that would be too bad. Scottsville, 20 hours per week. Are we okay with saying have to have add these?
That's the ARL.
I can't. I wish I could.
It's freezing. I'm glad I brought a jacket.
It's because there's usually the sun is beating down. It's not so bad. I'm sorry. I usually try to remember to bring extra sweater.
I came prepared.
A blanket.
Yeah,
we
we
have our
were
own
talking
blanket.
about putting the blankets in the
Yeah, just
closet.
keeping them in
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
checking them out. I'm sorry, Kathy. Okay, so then we're at the 20-hour children's specialist position here. This is 2 back-to-back new positions to ask Albemarle County for. So we don't have a rep from Albemarle on this body right now. The budget committee will, and that person might balk at having 2 back-to-back, but the personnel committee can say we identified this as a need. All right, so the line now is underneath number 5. The substitute positions, substitute hours at Central seems fairly doable. This one gets dicey, the 10 hours for the courier, because that's a cost for everybody. And again, the budget committee will look at that, but I can give you those costs.
I kind of feel that one needs to go on there if it's a cost to everyone.
It's
I
like
think
that, it's right. It's not as much.
It's almost $12,000 total. 7 of that would be Albemarle, 2,800 Charlottesville, and then Green, Louisa, and Nelson would be about $750, $600, $500.
yeah, that one should go on.
We did not offering to whip out her checkbook for that one.
No,
She's already got,
$77 I can handle.
she's already got her plaque.
I think the line might be between 9 and 10 here. So that would include Crozet sub hours, 2 more hours, asking for the 2 more hours for the reference position, and then drawing the line at the new circ support position, unfortunately.
Because we're asking for several.
That would be the 3rd new position that we're asking Albemarle for. Which we can do, and I know they need it.
I can say no.
And we can say no, right?
So I didn't, last year, I felt like the budget process with you guys out and everyone said yes. That's how easy you get it. You get projected and. on
Yeah,
the
I think
lines
especially-
And asked to come try again.
Yes, that's part of the give and take most years, you know. And it's not all of our jurisdictions support library service, and they want the best library service that they can get. But as I mentioned, it's competing needs. Right now, they're all a little scared. Not scared. They're worried about a coming recession. So. Okay, so that would be circ support there. Number 11 is the 10 more hours for regional reference. So is the line at the top 10, those are the things that we're recommending? Or was it even earlier than that? Number 10 was that the new position here, which I said would be the 3rd one that we'd be asking for.
And would be the, I think you said after 9 for drawing
Yeah.
the line because you're asking for 2 new positions.
Right, and number 10 would be a 3rd new position.
And that might tip it over. I don't know.
Well,
Look at my crystal ball.
what we can do is we can recommend the top 10 and then let the budget committee crunch the numbers a little bit and see. I think that's, if it overall, it makes such a big impact that it makes it
That they can,
over a 3 to 4% increase then. So we'll go with the top 10.
Yeah.
Kathy? I'll write this down. This is so important. I'm gonna write it on paper. Okay, so at the board meeting on the 24th, Kathy, I will come back just with those 10 and a list in order and say that these are the well, you can say, I'll just put it up on the screen.
Doesn't really matter.
This is the ones that we think the budget committee should include, and the top 2. Okay, this is a tough thing to do, so thank you all for taking the time to talk it through.
I wish we could say yes to all.
I know, and some years we can, but
I know last time we.
yeah. And I always prep the managers that, it might not be the first time you ask for something, but you keep asking, you keep showing.
Wear it down. You move to the top of the list.
Yeah, and it's not just getting through the board, it's then getting through the budget process with our partners, so.
We have to look at the bright side. Positions are not being cut.
That's very true, right now.
So, better.
Yeah. Good point.
And it's great that's so popular.
That's right. Okay, you wanna hammer us out?
Just me.
Okay, Marisa?
I know. Yeah, he needs socks, a fur coat, and I had a scarf in my. Oh my gosh. If you're gonna be in here longer, we invite you for that.